everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Mercedes and today I'm going to be reading the 1-star rating over my 5-star books. There's nothing that quite gets my adrenaline pumping than listening to people not enjoy the book that I loved. And yes, of course, we know that reading is subjective. A book that I love, you're bound to hate. A book that you love, I'm bound to hate. That's just the cruel way that the world works. For this video, I'm going to be using Goodreads, and that's how I'm going to, 1, track my star rating, and 2, read all of the reviews. For me, Goodreads is where I just keep track of my star rating. I feel like I do more in-depth reviews on TikTok and Instagram, but Goodreads is where I just will give a star rating. That helps me keep track of everything that I've been reading. Maybe eventually I'll get to the point where I'll write out a review for Goodreads, but right now I'm having fun just leaving a star rating. Before we get into all of that, how is everybody doing? It's almost spooky season. In my head, it is spooky season. Look at my shirt. It says, keep the candy, I'll take the books. Don't be surprised if you see me in this sweatshirt for the rest of spooky season because I feel like this is me. I don't want your candy, give me the damn book. This is a bit of a shameless plug because I do make these t-shirts. So I'll go ahead and link my link tree in the description and that will take you to either my Shopify account if you're interested. I do have a few more bookish spooky designs, as well as if you're looking for my Goodreads, the link tree will take you there as well. But how are we doing? My TBR for October is off the rails. Dare I say it's a little delusional because I know maybe I'll get around to all these books. I don't know. I kind of went on a bit of a book buying bender. Now I think I have 20 books added to my TBR and they're all spooky season themed. So I think I have my work cut out for me for October. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into reading these 1-star reviews. I feel like I have to start with my Roman Empire of a book. If you know me, I feel like you know me because of this book, and that is How Does It Feel by Janine O'Reilly. This is the Infatuated Fae series. This is every copy that I own and also every edition that has ever been released. I have special editions, I have custom editions, I have the indie covers in paperback and hardback, I have the ARC version. I love this book to say the least. In my last video, I did read the 1-star reviews for this book, but I feel like it's been long enough that more 1-star reviews have probably come in, and this book is top tier, one of my favorite books ever. I'm not going to call these people out or anything. I'm just gonna read their comment. This is from 2 months ago. Someone says, it's kind of like ACOTAR if you got it off Temu. But to be honest, that in itself is kind of a compliment because comparing anything to ACOTAR is great. It's great. And I will say, whenever I did finish the book, I was like, oh my god, this reminds me of how I felt whenever I read the ACOTAR series. Do I think they're similar? No, I don't. I think it's a backhanded compliment in my head. This person says, DNF'd at page 94 of the published paperback. Read that page and tell me that's not disgusting writing. Almost 100 pages into a 300-page book is fair enough time for something to pick up, and this just did not. Okay, before we move on from here, I feel like I have to break out the republished version. Now, I haven't read the republished version. I know there are some edits in the republished version that are different from the indie book. So let me do my research and see what this person is talking about. Okay. If you've read this book, you know that page 94 is the bog scene. So this is such an interesting time to DNF. It's funny that the DNF happened whenever the bog got introduced because no one likes the bog. Let's continue to read the review. I knew from the get-go I would have to push through the beginning for it to get good, but it just kept getting worse somehow. From the sentence structuring to the content of the story itself, this was awful in every way. I do not understand the hype and I'm a little concerned for those who love it. No hate, just concerned. Okay. with you until you lost me, especially with that last half of your review. Yes, How Does It Feel is one of those books that you hear it's a dark fantasy, and the beginning of the book you're like, wait, no, it's not. There is a pretty intense transition around the page like 90 mark, so you kind of do have to get through this world building to get to the thick of it. If you don't like the book, just say that. But my issue is when people who don't like a book that has a lot of hype around it then come for the people who like it. And then you say, no hate, just concern. No girl, that is hate. Imagine going into a debate with someone where you're at the beginning of the debate and the other person was like, no matter what you say, you're wrong and I'm concerned for you that you have this opinion. That's not an open conversation. That's not very reading is subjective. We will get out of this review and read one more before we move on to the next book. This person says, the FMC Callie is insufferable. She's some kind of not like other girls, knockoff Disney princess who frolics with animal and refuses to curse because she's so sweet. She says things like holy stars, which is very cutesy. Every character is in love with her utter perfection, and she refers to herself in third person in a first person POV book. And once you've got the ick, there's just no going back. And then she uses quotations to quote a certain part of the book and says, Kelly Patterson certainly wasn't the type to use crass language. I was a scientist, not a sailor. I feel like I cannot tell you my true thoughts and opinions about this review without spoiling. I think this is an interesting thing to pick up on in the writing. What I will say, and I'm really trying to think of my words very carefully here to not spoil anything, is that maybe everything's not what it seems. That's all I'm going to say. Let's go ahead and move on to our next book. Let's do one of my most recent 5-star reads, which was Fantasma by Kaylee Smith. I think this is going to be fun. It's a newer release, so it hasn't been on the market for a long time. So let's go ahead and see what everyone has to say about it, especially the people who maybe didn't enjoy it. Of course, I gave it 5 stars. It is a dark fantasy. It does have gothic vibes to it. There is a paranormal element to it. And in my mind, this is like the perfect book for spooky season. The plot is so good. The characters are fantastic. The spice. I will say that sometimes I feel like spice can get a little redundant and a little lackluster. And sometimes when I'm reading a book, I'll skip over the spicy scenes because I just am not really feeling it. With Fantasma, that was a completely different experience. Just the whole book together, especially you have a badass main female character, Ophelia. She's the type of person that you don't want to double cross, but at the same time you're getting insights into her mental psyche, and she has her own demons that she's struggling with, so to see both sides of her was really phenomenal. And the main male character, Blackwell, ooh, I love him. He's one of my favorites that I have read in a long time. So with that being said, let's go ahead and read the 1-star reviews. So this person says, this was too long and Ophelia was too stupid. The beginning, as it introduced Ophelia as a character plus introduced the setting of Fantasma and a bit of world building, was fantastic, in which the book had kept up with that. I don't know what that means, but continuing, sadly the plot was underwhelming and seemed to repeat the same 2 to 4 scenes over and over again. Ophelia arguing with Blackwell, Ophelia going to dinner, Ophelia going through a trial, Ophelia struggling with what she had to do. It got a bit tiring after the 50% mark of the story. Also, there was a lot of blood. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be an element of the enticing fear or tension or ... something else. I mostly skipped all of the steamy scenes and won't comment about them. That's crazy because I ate the steamy scenes up. Overall, I was disappointed. Wow. Hold on. Everyone hold on for a second. I need to go grab my book. If you open it up to where it says content and trigger warnings, it will give you a website to go to. It does have a little bit of trigger warnings here, but then there is a website linked. If you go to that website. It says, Fantasma contains elements of horror, including gruesome descriptions of gore, torture, death, and lots of blood. So the blood that is a negative in this review is also a part of the trigger warning. And sometimes I wonder why people give lower ratings for things that were listed in the trigger warning. That's just, again, reading is subjective. If this reviewer felt that way, that is completely her prerogative. I thought the whole plot was really engaging, and the arguing that happens with Blackwell is they're struggling to come to terms with what is happening. Yeah, it's safe to say that I, of course, disagree. I mean, that's the point. I gave it 5 stars. This person gave it 1 star. Let's read one more review. Oh, okay, I found one. This one says, where are all the positive reviews coming from? I swear this year I've DNF'd more books than I have in my entire life. It got to the point where I skimmed from 60% to the end just to see how it ended. It was predictable, rushed, and it felt like the author was shoving so many tropes down the reader's throat as possible. I need to stop taking Booktok recs because they usually lead to disappointment. My issue here is the beginning. We start out guns blazing. Where are all the positive reviews coming from? If you didn't like the book, just say that. Not every popular book is going to be for everyone. I have had my fair share of popular Booktok books that I did not enjoy, but I will never judge anyone who loved those books because what? Reading is subjective. Exactly. At least we are on the same page here. Think of Booktok as this onion, and there's layers. You just have to find your right layer. I forget who said that. There was someone who said that on Booktok, and it was such a good analogy. And maybe you're just not on the right layer. I'm going to stand behind my 5-star rating. I think it's perfect for spooky season if you're looking for a dark gothic fantasy. I loved it so much. Let's go ahead and move on to our next 5-star, 1-star reading review. You know what I'm trying to say. Oh God. I'm going down my Goodreads and seeing what I gave 5 stars most recently. And after Fantasma, my next 5-star read is Heartless by Elsie Silver. No, I'm really nervous to read the 1-star ratings of this book because I genuinely, if I could go into any contemporary romance world, it would be Heartless. I love that book. The depth to the characters was so good. Their character development was even better, and the world building on top of that I think is phenomenal. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Heartless is the 2nd book in the Chestnut Springs series. You have the main male character Cade and the main female character Willa. Willa was Cade's nanny. Cade is a single father, and he also does most of the work around their family farm. It's like a small town forbidden single dad romance. I wish I could read it again for the first time. I feel like this is going to be the only review I read of this book because there are a lot of reviews that just say DNF on it, which is totally fine. This one kind of goes into a little bit more in depth, and it is a little bit of a longer one. So in sake of this video not being super long, I'll just read this 1-star review. Actually, it's in sake of my feelings being intact by the end of this video. This person says, tell me why the main male lead, despite being 38 years old, acts like a prepubescent hormonal boy. Some of Cade's inner monologue was downright cringy and gave me the ick. Everyone seems to love this book, and I had high expectations going in, but they clearly weren't met. This is an age gap romance. There's a 13-year age difference. And it's made clear since the very start of the book that the author made sure to remind the reader every few chapters how old the male lead is and how young the female lead is. What's interesting about this is I typically don't love an age gap romance. Most of the time, genuinely, I hate an age gap romance. And I did not feel this way at all. I didn't even, like, that wasn't even in my head when I read this book, which is interesting that that is this person's take. Let's continue. I am indifferent towards age gap romances, but one thing I can't stand is the constant emphasis on the age gap and reducing the female lead to just her age. I don't feel this way. I don't feel this way at all. It's not about how I feel. It's about how this person feels. So let's continue. This book made me appreciate Summer and Rhett so much more as a couple. The relationship development between Cade and Willa was too fast-paced. You're telling me this man was lusting after our girl after hearing her laugh in a coffee shop? Please tell me that some of y'all find that disturbing. God, okay. What do I say? I'll say I respect your opinion. If that's how you felt, that's how you felt. I, as someone who doesn't like age gap romances, I feel like we're on the same page there. We both don't like age gap romances. I don't feel like this one was done in a cringy way. That's just my opinion. And I kind of liked the instant lust aspect of it, and that's kind of what gives it like this forbidden edge to it, because Cade is struggling with, like, he knows he shouldn't be interested in Willa, but he is just so attracted to her that he can't fight these feelings. And I think the inner dialogue moments that we have with Cade really shows his true character, because to the world he's like closed off, and when we get those moments of his inner dialogue, you see that he may be a man, but he's also very sensitive, and he has a lot of things that he's struggling with within himself. And that, in my mind, that's why I love the character development and the depth to the characters, in the same way with Willa. And books that do that kind of development justice are my favorite. So while I disagree with this review, I respect your opinion. And for the sake of my feelings, I'm going to move on to one more review. It's Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This is a thriller book. I did listen to it on the audio. I think the audio is the way to go, because this book revolves around a true crime podcast that is trying to solve cold cases. And the main female character finds herself in the middle of all of this because she actually is the main suspect in said cold case. So I think the audio does the podcast sections of the book really well. So I loved the audio performance. I loved the plot itself. Let's go ahead and hear what people have to say when they hated this book. This review is kind of a long one, so let's just go ahead and get into it. This person says, I do not understand the hype for this book at all. The only thing I can say about it is that the writing itself is competent. The story, the characters, the twist, all bleh. The characters are all annoying. Every single one of them, from the stupidly smug podcaster who someone is producing podcast episodes about a murder mystery daily, to an overbearing mother, to the obnoxious ex-husband, to the 80-year-old grandma who forces the whole situation, and the unbearable main character whose thoughts are constantly interrupted by the little voice in her head describing ways to kill the people she's talking to. I'm sorry. For me, that sounds like a really good time. Like, when she's describing as the negatives to this book, I'm like, hell yeah, that sounds great. Plot was nothing special, and in fact, is at least the third book I've read with a similar plot. Okay, that's interesting. This is the first book I've read with a plot like this, so that's maybe why I loved it and this person didn't. I totally knew what the twist would end up being. I was patiently oblivious, and I finally gave up because I didn't want to see how the story was going to go. Okay? So I said F it and skipped to the end. If you're looking for a solid thriller, look elsewhere, especially for a book that doesn't usually use god-awful tropes. Okay, if you don't like the book, just say that, you know? While I appreciate the insight of the reasons why this person didn't like the book, what's funny is the reasons why they didn't like it, I enjoyed it. I actually didn't find this book to be predictable at all. I don't even think there was a moment when I was listening to the book that I was even thinking about the outcome, like the final conclusion. I was so immersed into the storyline. And while I can understand there is a moment in the book where it does get slightly redundant and like it does like lose its fast pacing just a little bit, only for a second, and then it picks right back up. In my mind, it's always so interesting to hear other people's opinion about a book that you love, because again, the reasons they hated it, I loved it. Whenever you're done with the book, do you guys ever go into Goodreads and like read the reviews of like the 5-star ratings or like the 1-star ratings? Do you guys ever go on Goodreads and read the reviews at all? Reading is really what you make out of it. So if you want a more critical reading experience, you're totally inclined to that. If you want more of a casual reading experience, that is also your prerogative. And that's what I love about the reading world. That's just my thoughts and opinions. That's all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys are doing well. Okay, bye. Love you.